career, business, life, and relationships. This is the Growth to Freedom Show. Now, here is your host, Dan Kuschell.
Welcome to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. I'm Dan Kuschell. Thanks for making us part of your day. Today's show brought to you by Done For You Solutions, and we'd love to connect with you. You can join us on Twitter at Dan_Kuschell. That's Dan_Kuschell, or email us at info@growthtofreedom.com. Oh, by the way, stay tuned because we've got a special resource package for you, and it's going to be free. Today's show, I want to dive right into it. We have a special guest expert back with us today. It's so awesome to see you.
So good to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have some fun because let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought to yourself, you know what? I feel like, I'm a little bit sad, a little bit angry, a little bit afraid, or maybe you're dealing with anxiety, or maybe you're dealing with being a little depressed, or maybe you're dealing with what you feel or maybe addiction, or sleeplessness, or stress, or maybe you feel like me, I'm ADD. Wow, all this stuff going on coming at me. How do I deal with it? Well, we have an expert who is uniquely qualified to show you how to get control of your emotion. We're going to talk about emotional mastery, emotional fitness. In fact, 7 steps to emotional fitness. Our expert today is Dr. Cristy Lopez. She's a great friend. Yes. We've known each other for about 5 years, right?
Yeah, wow, yeah.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Yep.
She's seen my little ones grow from like this to, now they're playing soccer and doing all these crazy things, right? My daughter surprises us with this incredible song, right?
Sharing. Yeah.
So enough about them. Let's talk about you. So Dr. Cristy Lopez is an expert. She's a psychologist. She helps coach people who are in a transition in their life, career, business, and or relationships. And she's been a guest expert on the media, by the way. Dr. Phil, you probably heard of that show, right?
Yes.
Dr. Phil, Downsized, and many others. So we're incredibly blessed to have her with us. And I'm excited for you because I know she's made an incredible impact on my life, and I know she can do the same for you. So I'd like to dive right into it. For those who don't know who you are, right? Who the heck is Cristy Lopez, Dr. Cristy Lopez? What the heck does she do? Do.
I do all kinds of things. But yeah, Dr. Cristy Lopez. So I am a psychologist. I have a PhD in clinical psychology. And I'm also a coach. You're
like the head doctor.
Yes, but it's more than your head. But but because it's your behavior, it's everything associated with being a person and how you go through and navigate life and how you can control it and how you can direct it. And that's the main thing. You actually have control and ability to direct way more than people think they do.
So today we're going to talk about not the head part of it, we're going to talk about the heart that ultimately helps direct the head. Is that right?
It's all intertwined. Yeah, it's all intertwined.
And it's funny, I had someone who emailed and said, Dan, how the heck did you even get here? With what you do, how is it you got here? And I know we've talked about this, but if you're watching or listening right now, you probably really don't know. So for example, my mom, she's an incredible human being, one of the most gracious, loving human beings in the world, but she suffers from depression, and she's been diagnosed with what's called paranoid schizophrenia, and she's been on medication. I've seen this from the time I was about 6, and was incredibly curious about the brain and the mind and emotions, and so I started studying at about 12 or 13, how is it that I can make sure that I don't catch this disease, right? Because I didn't understand it, and most people don't. So that was a start. And then when I was in college, as I went through some learning and obviously pursuing my degree, what ended up happening, there was a girl who I'd went to high school with. She came to visit. I went to this school in Grand Rapids, Michigan, a little college called St. Thomas Aquinas College, where I played baseball. And she was there visiting one day, and she told me that she was thinking about killing herself. I was 17 years old and oh my God, this burden. And I didn't know what to do except just to kind of talk her through it. So that was kind of my start. And it was she told me I don't know, 6 months, a year later, she said I saved her life. And one of the things I remember sharing with her was a quote that I learned. I read out of Sports Illustrated. It was an issue with Wade Boggs, Don Mattingly, and I forget who else. But those two, they were talking about hitting, and there was a quote in there about worry. right?
Okay.
Because I don't know, maybe you're like me. I have someone who has had a tendency to worry a lot.
I'm
right?
glad you said it that way.
I know, you've been training me for like 5 years.
Yes, exactly.
And the quote was from the Bible, and it's, what's the use of worry? What good does it do? Does it add a single day to your life?
Right.
And of course not. If it can't do such things as that, why worry over bigger things, right? And I don't know what impact that quote will have for you as you're watching or listening right now, but apparently it saved this girl's life. And so since then, I've been studying, the mind, the body, the spirit to really work to be a better human being. I do a lot of work, as you know, with Joe Polish and Genius Network, and really his whole goal is to reduce suffering for entrepreneurs. And I've, fell in love with that idea because it's ultimately part of the journey that I feel I'm on. And that's what you do every day. You work with thousands and thousands of people, right? And so we talk about emotional mastery. So what would you say would be our big promise for those watching or listening today that they could walk away with?
Well, today we're going to start, because this is a pretty big, broad topic here.
You mean we can't cover in like 10 minutes?
Yeah, we can get going. We can get a good start. So that's what I want to do, is really have us start delving into this. And what is emotion? What are feelings? All the kind of possible language or the way that people try to conceptualize their emotional life. But more importantly, what can you do? Because again, you can be more directive and controlling of your life, including your emotional life.
And what do you see that happens when someone masters their emotion? I've been really deep diving in this the last few months with certain things going on and really wanting to take it to another level. What do you see when someone masters their emotion? Because some people might be going like I would have 10 years ago, that's foo-foo, airy-fairy kind of stuff. What the heck is this all about, right? Emotions.
Okay.
Give me something with real tangible meat, like money or whatever, right? So talk about what is the outcome you've seen when people really, truly master their emotions.
Freedom and peace. Those are the two main things that people always say. They finally feel like they're at peace, and now they have freedom, which you do, because now you have, growth to freedom, because now you have freedom.
Welcome to growth to freedom.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's called that. So, because now you have, once you learn these things, and you get this mastery of not only emotions, but your thoughts, there's many ways of working on this, comprehensively and holistically. And then you grow to this new sense of freedom and peace. And it's just, I can't tell you, all the different people I see, they almost use the exact same words of freedom and peace.
And what would that be worth to you? As you're watching right now, listening, of course, this is going to be the catalyst. This is going to be a starting point. And ideally, we're going to have probably numerous sessions about this. I think we're going to talk about putting a book or an audio program together or something that really deep dives into this. But what would that be worth? I know for me, it's been priceless, right? And it's a work in progress. And it likely will be a continued work in progress, because one of the things that I see, Dr. Lopez, is I think today more than ever, we see all these traits, right? You've talked about traits, not necessarily labels, right? Which is, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. But, the ADD, which I believe, we've talked about that I suffer from, or maybe not suffer, but I have as a gift, or ADHD, or, some of the anxiety or stress and so on. But what I notice, in business, one of the things I've taught for years, probably 2 decades, is one of the fastest ways to grow a business is you condense time frames, right? And one way to do that is marketing. Another way to do that is selling, large groups of people instead of one-on-one, right? Yeah. So you're just condensing the time frame down. And today, more than ever, because of technology, everyone's time frame is condensed. So we're dealing with more messages, more opportunities, more things, and therefore it's putting all this extra pressure. So what used to take a year to deal with, today we're dealing with that in about 2 weeks.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's constant barrage of stimuli coming in all the time.
All right, so let's dive into it. So what, someone that might be wanting to go, okay, I want emotional mastery. I'm bought hook, line, and sinker. I'm in. I want to go at this level. What would you say are some of the first steps that someone can take to really get emotional mastery?
The very first necessary step is awareness. You have to be aware in order to even start working on something. Okay, so that's the first step, is being aware. And how do you even know what you're being aware of? Because I will ask people, a question of how do they feel about something, and a lot of times they will come back and tell me how they thought about it. Okay, that wasn't the question. The question was, would you feel about it? Okay. And then sometimes they may even do something more physiological. So a lot of times people can't even, or they have a hard time with the language of emotion or feeling, and they can't even identify it, and they're actually doing something totally different, like responding with a thought or something like that. So So I need to see where people are at and assess that, so then I can help them kind of back up all the way to the beginning and then kind of move forward.
So I'm going to stop you right there. So as you're watching right now, as you're listening, let's do a check-in right now. How are you feeling? What are you feeling? If you had to put a title on it, a theme on it, a description on it, what would that be? Are you feeling excited? Are you feeling like you're contributing? Do you feel like you have love, connection, passion, joy, fulfillment, happiness?
See, and how you did that people can't do that.
I couldn't do that when I met you 5 years ago.
Oh, I probably did it with you then, because
You did.
I'll ask people right now on the spot, tell me as many negative feelings as you can. Usually people are like, then they maybe say 1, 2, 3, and then they're like stuck. Then I'll ask them, okay, how about as many positive feelings as you can? Same thing. Like, I don't think I've ever had anyone be able to say over 10 feelings.
2 feelings.
Or I don't think I've ever had anyone over 10 feelings.
10 feelings.
And that's like even on the high side. Usually it's around 4 to 6.
Right.
And then people are just like stumped. So how are you able to express something if you don't even have the language to it? Because a lot of times this is what happens too, especially when I see couples. They're like, oh, well, but he doesn't express his feelings, or, she doesn't talk, she doesn't express. Well, what are you expressing? You don't have the language to be able to express, so it's more than working on the expression. We got to back up and we got to go to the identifying and the properly labeling, even as a feeling, and then labeling the feeling of your emotional state. So then you can learn how to express it. So there's all kinds of like ways of building this up.
So I want to encourage you right now, as you're watching, as you're listening, really identify 2 questions. One, what do you feel when you're happy? Like, what is that? Or what is it when you are at your best, when you're seizing the moment, when you're on top of your day? What are those feelings that you're experiencing? Write them down.
Yeah,
right?
How do you know that that's the case?
Yes.
Because something is going on in your internal state.
And then secondly, identify what are the things you're unhappy with, or those feelings around, just being, maybe in a bad space, or, when life isn't going that well. And if you start there, you're going to identify some label. And then the next step is to start learning new language patterns to be able to work with, right?
Yes, which is why we've already said this a couple of times. There's ways of using your language to help you with that.
Awesome. So when we come back after the break, Dr. Cristy Lopez is going to dive more into emotional fitness, emotional mastery, 7 steps to emotional fitness. And you know what? Are you ready to take your life to a new level? I know you are. Get ready. We're going to be covering that and a whole lot more here on growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. Let's summarize the first segment of the show. We've got Dr. Cristy Lopez, psychologist. She's been a media expert with Dr. Phil, Downsized. She helps people like you, like me, help with their transition in career, business, life, and relationships. And she can definitely show you how to get emotional fitness, emotional mastery. And we're talking about 7 steps to emotional fitness today. So we talked about a few steps in the beginning. Number 1, you've got to have the awareness, right?
Yes.
Of where it starts. Number 2, you started to dive into the physiology, right? And I know that's one of the biggest things that people can work with. We can dive a little bit deeper in that. And one of the things you shared and taught me years ago that I think for any type of success, whether it's emotional mastery, financial mastery, any area of life, I call it the 4 pillars, right, of success. And it's adapted from what you shared, which is WAAA, right? Okay. So it's WA. Because we all want more WA and less
Right. Yes.
Right? And what is that, by the way? It's an acronym for what do I want? Right. So the question, what do I want? Then the second step, or the take action, right? You've got to make a decision and take action with it and see where you're at. Number 3 is you assess it once you take action. And then lastly is you adjust it and adapt it. And then you start the process all over again. And that's how you create massive momentum. So you want WA? It's that 4-step approach. So with WA, let's talk about physiology. Why is it important? How do people use physiology the wrong way? And how can people use it the right way to get more of the mastery and emotions they want?
So the thing is, your emotional state is really a physiological state. And then feeling is the cognitive word you're putting on it. And that's how you're labeling it. So you need a language for your emotional states. So you need to be aware what's going on with you in your body, because there really are physiological components associated with each emotional state. So chemicals are being released. You're very physiological. So are you aware of yourself? Can you feel like muscle tension? Can you feel like blood flow, high blood pressure, like that's going up, or your heart is beating fast, or anything like that? And even physiology in terms of like muscle movement, so like the expressions on your face. So there's a lot of physiology behind this and neurology, okay? So it's all connected to each other. And yes, your heart, because your heart, your brain, it's all connected to each other, and they're feeding each other. So the first thing is, are you aware of your physiological state? Because then how do you try to cognitively label that with a feeling? And are you able to do that? A lot of times people are not. Like I was saying, they'll say a thought instead. Or they'll say a feeling, but they are very restricted. So I always say it's kind of like, it's like you're living life with a box of like 8 crayons versus a box of 152 crayons, because you only have like sad, mad, and glad, or something like that. So then everything that's happening with you, your emotional state and what's going on with you environmentally, you're somehow interpreting it into something very restricted, like these 3 feelings. So you're going around with like a little box of crayons versus this wonderful, expansive, multi-hued rainbow of emotion and feeling. That's your life, to be able to live and experience all of the variations between that. But a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, and what's amazing is we anchor not only the positive emotions, but the negative emotions. We started off in the first segment talking about, identifying a couple questions, right? What are the positive emotions you might feel in a day or in a week? And what are the negative emotions you feel in a day or a week, right? And it's amazing, the list. And I think that comes back to your crayon idea. For positive, usually it'll be 8 crayons. For negative, for many of it, I know for me, the first time I did it, I had far more crayons in my negative emotion
most people
list
do.
Right? And then the other thing is how we use our body, right? I know I've been depressed, right? And when I've been depressed, I think about my body, like what type of posture did I have, right? It was slumped over, head down, shoulders, slumped, usually sitting, right? This is a common physiological place for people to live in when they're in, call it a depressed state. On the other hand, when I'm standing up, when I'm moving around, when I'm using body language and using my, there's, call it power moves issue. It may sound a little corny as you're watching right now. Maybe it makes, I'd prefer to be standing up doing this show. I work better when I'm standing up, moving, etc., because you can really feel the true passion there. And, like sitting at a desk is like not, for me, maybe for anybody, is not the best place to be, because you can find yourself in a very passive, reactive state versus being assertive and into the game. So talk about that a little bit more. Yeah,
because your body state is being correlated with physiology, then what chemicals are being released in your body and what's going through your bloodstream. So I always tell people this, like, okay, so you know how a dog is sad or something's wrong with a dog, that what happens? Like their tail is under, tucked
their legs,
right? Okay. Now it's a little bit hard to be like, hey dog, let me do some cognitive therapy with you. Okay. But but because they can't talk. Okay. So, or at least I don't have the ability to do that. But what I could do, and what you could do, is you just physically lift their tail up. If you physically lift their tail, they actually will become better. They're okay now because you did the behavioral thing for them, which kicked off the physiology.
That might cause a couple HR issues in companies if people really do that with team members on their side. No, I'm kidding.
So what I say is you have the power to lift your own tail, but yes, you're not going around doing that. But that's the thing, is you have control over this. So I'll kind of like condense it.
So in other words, to take it from my kids, if you want to have positive emotional fitness, we just need to lift our tail feathers now and then. Yeah.
So after we kind of go through this is kind of what I usually do, is like I'll thoroughly go over something like a topic with someone, and then we really, it's expansive. Then we come all the way back. It's kind of like your time condensed thing. We come all the way back and we get something really quick to mean the whole thing. Because when you're out there in life, you could then just quickly say, like, lift my tail, like, or lift your tail feathers or something like that, and that even alone could do it. So that's what I'll tell people, that story, and then that's what we're going to do, is we're going to like lift your own tail. And so the power stances you're talking about, there's research on this, okay? When you stand, like the Wonder Woman, the Wonder Woman stance, when you stand in that stance, chemicals are released that are the positive chemicals and that help with the confidence and all that kind of thing. And when you're in your...
Now, I don't know that I would be good in the Wonder Woman stance.
Okay, but that one's really powerful.
That might freak my wife out just a little bit.
Well, you don't need a cape. You just...
How about a Superman pose? Can I do that one instead of the Wonder Woman pose?
Yeah, I guess his is close enough. That should be fine. So, yeah, so you can do that because there's physiology related to that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit more on the...
What are a couple other hacks that someone could use for body language to put themselves in that positive emotional state, positive power position that you're talking about?
So yeah, so you have all of these things we just talked about with your body, but you actually also have your face. So your face, your muscles of your face are very much connected directly with your feelings, and then your heart too. It's actually amazing what goes on here. But when you manipulate your face, either you on purpose or somebody comes along and does something, it creates a change. So if you are physically smiling, it starts this change going on. It's hard to be able to be in the state of sadness and depression when your muscles are physically doing something else. And it's kind of like this conflict then that like kicks it going into the other way.
And what's amazing that you say that, Dr. Lopez, a couple things come to mind. One, I remember I used to drive my team nuts because I'd walk around the office, are you happy today? And they give me a look, and I go, well, tell your face. Right? And, it would usually get a laugh like you just gave me most of the time until they got to know me, and then I'd kind of irritate them a little bit. So then it maybe wasn't the best anchor to use. That was one. Number two, I forget, I think a gal named Lori Rubich taught me this years ago. She said, you know what, when you're not in the happiest of states, just look up, because it's impossible to look up and not smile. So when we come back, we're going to dive more into emotional fitness, emotional mastery, and the 7 steps to emotional fitness with Dr. Cristy Lopez on growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com. Are you ready to transform your life, business, and relationships? Well, we're going to show you how today. To summarize the first 2 segments of the show, we've got Dr. Cristy Lopez, psychologist, media expert on Dr. Phil. Downsized, she helps people with dealing with transition in their career, business, life, and relationships, and also does coaching, right? Yep. And we've been talking about emotional mastery, the 7 steps. We've covered the first 2. And I mean, we could go so much deeper on every one of these, right? Literally, we could spend hours on each one. And so you're just giving a very surface overview. So number 1, we talked about awareness. We talked about the physiology and the importance of that, which is where we left off, naming the emotional state, which is, identify your negative emotion, identify your positive emotions that you deal with on a weekly basis, and start building I would call it a vocabulary and a way to articulate feelings a lot more. And you know what? Over the last few months, I've actually been writing a lot about this whole idea. And number 3 is identify the triggers, right? Yes. You talk about identifying the triggers. Talk about that a little bit more.
So so being aware and actually monitoring. So this is one of the things I will have people do then, is to monitor their feelings, and then beyond this emotional state, what's going on with you physiologically.
And when you say that, by the way, right, to monitor. A way to do that is just check in and go, okay, how am I feeling, right?
Yeah, so you can do it on your own periodically, or you can set like a little alarm. And then actually, so some of my clients have told me that they found apps that will kind of prompt you to do it too. So now there's apps for it too. So you can do this, so you can be in the moment, because this is the other thing. People are not in the moment. So how are they in tune with their feelings if they're not in the moment? But when they get that reminder, then it's like, okay, yes, what is going on with me now? Let me assess myself kind of in all of these ways.
Actually, I just thought of a new app, by the way, as we're talking about. It's called Gut Check.
Oh, yeah.
Gut Check to find out if we're in check.
Yes.
With our emotions.
And that would also cover intuition, which is something else I talk about. But anyway, but yeah, so if you do that, but then, what is really helpful is if you write it down. So I actually have a kind of a template I give people to write down this kind of thing too. So you can write down your feeling, your physiology, write down your feeling, what's coming up with it, and then expand your vocabulary. So now a lot of times people, they don't have this vocabulary, so I will give them like a list. They're always surprised, because they usually will say like 4 to 6 feelings, and then I'm like, here you go. And then it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages worth of feelings. And everybody's like, wow, okay. So then you're building up your language your vocabulary for your feelings. And then you can ask yourself, what was underlying that? Like, what kind of triggered that? What set that off? So now you're looking at kind of environmental cues, or it could even be a thought, an internal cue, a thought you had yourself. Or it could even be something like a smell. Like, smell is like, it goes right to your brain memory, like, oh, it's emotionally laden, the whole thing. So you got to find out what triggered that feeling. Okay, so that would be the next thing, is finding out your triggers. And then after the triggers, there's usually something underneath there, like an unmet need or something, because this is why it's so powerful. A lot of people, again, they have a hard time identifying this kind of stuff, because what's underneath it. And I can't tell you, this is like super important, especially for couples. Because when couples start getting into something, they're just like, they're ready to roll, like they're ready to fight, and they're ready to go. And I always have to tell them, like, okay, what you really need to be asking yourself, step back and ask yourself, what is the underlying need that your partner is trying to communicate? because your partner is probably having a hard time expressing it. But you can try and figure out what the underlying need is and then communicate about what that underlying need is, because that underlying need is like tapping into some big, huge reservoir that you've been carrying around with you all your life and just adding to it. And that's why seemingly little things seem to blow up.
And I imagine we could spend an episode on needs.
Oh,
and maybe
yeah.
we should probably just do that.
Yes.
And, I forget if it was Tony Robbins or who it was from, identified, a set of core needs. There's certainty, uncertainty, there's connection, significance, and then growth and contribution. And there's other things layered in there. We don't have time to go into it now, but those being the needs that if it's unmet, then we act out in many ways, and that's what you're talking about with these triggers. Is that right?
Yeah, so something's triggering, and then it's like, it's almost like a powder keg type thing. Like it triggers, it starts like like you're lighting the bomb kind of deal, because then it's going down into this big reservoir of something.
And despite what you and I have been led to believe, what I believe to be true is that triggers don't come from the outside in. Although they can be a catalyst, really it's from the inside out.
Yeah, it's then how you're cognitively labeling that, like how you're perceiving it, and then how are you labeling that. That's the same thing with emotion. You got a physiological state. So you got the physiological state, but then there's like a little gap there, because then cognitively, what am I calling that? And that's the feeling. But that's for everything else too. Stimuli comes in, and then how are you perceiving it? And then how are you interpreting that? And what language are you using for that? That's why, again, language is so key, which is why I'm always on you about language.
Yes, and physiology, right? So it's awareness, it's physiology, it's the languaging around it. And if we want to shift our emotion in an instant, in a moment, right here, right now, a simple way to do that would be to change our posture and change the language, right?
Yep.
I mean, because we literally, if we do those two things, we anchor those two things, we can't stay in a depressed state. So when we come back, Dr. Cristy Lopez is going to continue to go through the 7 steps to emotional mastery, that and a whole lot more here on growthtofreedom.com. Welcome back to growthtofreedom.com, the show that helps you transform your life, business, and relationships. Let's summarize the first 3 segments of the show. We've had Dr. Cristy Lopez, psychologist, an expert in the media, Dr. Phil, Downsized. She helps people like you, like me, help with their career transition, life, relationships. Also does coaching. And she's been talking about the 7 steps to emotional mastery. We've been talking about awareness. We've been talking about the physiology. You want to have your Superman or Wonder Woman pose, right? That you can lean on in times of distress or times when you want to get to your best. I mean, you deserve that, right? You want to be your best more often than not, don't you? So you want to shift your negative emotion to a positive emotion, change your posture, change your physiology. We've been talking about naming the feeling, so coming up with a list. And I want to encourage you, when you call in for our resource package today, I'm going to have Dr. Cristy Lopez give us access to this multi-page list of emotions and feelings. And it's our gift to you. I mean, I think that's priceless, because it took me hours and hours and hours of research to be looking it up, because I think I lost the one you gave me.
Oh, no.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
So we're going to give this to you as a gift, and also make sure you get a chance to connect with Dr. Lopez as well. So I want you to pick up the phone right now. You're going to get a special resource package. You're going to get our best-selling book, A Champion in the Making. We're going to get you our best-selling book. What the heck's the name of the book? Walking with the Wise. I drew a blank there. Walking with the Wise, over 30 of the smartest mentors in the world. Apparently, I'm one of them, but I guess I just had a mind fart. I guess it proves you don't have to be that smart to get ahead and get in books like this. We're also going to give you our audio. Our audio program, our video program, and Dr. Cristy Lopez special master emotion list, right? That I think will help you be a better you. So you can get that all for free when you pick up the phone right now and call 602-246-3389, 602-246-3389, or go to our website at growthtofreedom.com/gift. That's growthtofreedom.com/gift. So let's dive in. We talked about triggering emotions, right? And now transitioning to underlying needs with the emotion. And we're going to do an episode. Can I get you to do that? All right, we're going to do that soon. And so dive into the next ones. I think we're at 4 or 5 right now of the 7 steps.
So there are 7 steps, but these it's not like a complete like lockstep thing, because they do overlap and they do still continue. So like you don't just become aware once and then that's it. So usually what happens is people will then come to some kind of like cognitive understanding, which is like the thinking about something around some feeling. So they may have this feeling, which trying to identify what is that feeling. Okay, is it sadness? Is it hurt? is it anger? So a lot of times people will do this still where...
Well, I've got a thought on that real quick that I want to dive in that you just made me think about. So I have discovered in my life when I've had my biggest breakthroughs many times, it's not when I've been comfortable. It's not when I've been, like, I call it this comfort zone. It's when I've gotten really ticked off to a degree.
Yeah.
Right? And I was disturbed or I was uncomfortable. And that created, I don't know, a disruption or an innovation in me to want to go to the next level. So talk about that a little bit, because we can play games with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
To put ourselves in a state of a little bit of enough disruption or enough disturbance or enough unhappiness, if you will, to then have that breakthrough. So hit on that a bit.
So emotion is attached to so many things. Okay, so not only is it attached to needs, but it's attached to like motivation. So that's kind of what you're talking about. And this is the whole thing about emotional mastery, is because how can you then be in control and direct things for...
Game it, in other words.
Yeah.
How can you game it?
For your greater good and the greater good of the world. Okay, so if you can do that, like what you're talking about, and turn it that way, that would be awesome. But you have to learn how to do that, because it could also happen the other way. And this like kind of called this like emotional cascade thing, which is when you start ruminating on a negative thing, and then it really does that snowball, and then now you're like out of control and you don't know how to regulate your emotions. So that's
like compound interest.
Yeah.
Is how I view it. It's like credit card debt, right? When you get a credit card debt, you know, if you have like whatever, I think the average person in the country, I saw a report last week, over $17,000 per person on credit card debt. And that compounding interest, it takes like 28 years for someone to pay it off if they pay the minimum payment because of compounding. The better, smarter way to do is start investing early in yourself and put it in like mutual funds and different things like that have that compound interest working over a long period of time. And now you can build up this nest egg. That's in a sense what you're talking about with emotional mastery, right?
So being able to do that into the direction that is healthy, that's what emotional mastery is about. Versus it goes off into this way that's seemingly uncontrollable, but it's not. Okay. Now here it is again, like I'm saying it like that, seemingly uncontrollable, because people will come up to some sort of statement of like, oh, well, I feel like it's uncontrollable, or I feel like I'm out of control, or this is again like when I'm talking about language. Okay?
Yes.
But they'll say things like this. And then one of the things I always let them know is like, okay, first of all, this whole statement about I feel like, you know, I'm a bad person, or I feel like, you know, I'm out of control, or this kind of thing, that is actually considered like a cognitive distortion, because it's actually not true. Okay, so you can remind yourself, it's called emotional reasoning. Like, oh, okay, so being aware and labeling it, so here we go with labeling and language again, labeling what it is. If you come up to this thought of like, oh, okay, well, I feel like I'm a bad person. Wait, hold on. Okay, you gotta tell yourself like, wait, hold on. It's one of those cognitive distortions. That's emotional reasoning. Just because I feel something doesn't mean it is so. Okay, so just because I feel like I'm a bad person doesn't mean that you are a bad person. Okay, so that's that little gap in between there where you then are making this little intervention with the way that you're thinking about it that can then shift it away from the emotional cascade thing and towards somewhere where you're trying to go.
So it reminds me of a story of, I went to church the other day and my minister shared this story up in front of the clergy. It was pretty funny. I think it fits here because a lot of it has to do with the attachment or detachment and or the meaning that we put on it, right? If I hear you correctly, that's what you're saying. And my minister, he shared this example, you know, this lady, she had donated a lot of money to the church. And so he told the lady in front of the clergy, you know, I'm going to let you choose the hymns today. Okay. Right? And so he did this in front of the whole service. And what ended up happening is he goes, okay, you can go ahead and choose the hymns. And she turned around and goes, I choose him and him and him. Okay. So her meaning of that was completely different. So I think that ties in with your cognitive distortion.
Right. Okay.
Right?
I see that. Yes. Okay. That's a good way to think about it. So just to maybe I'm going to kind of collapse a little bit here on the end here for time.
Okay.
So you can do one of the things that you can do is talk to yourself, like do this kind of cognitive thinking work about, okay, so I feel like a bad person. You can do the thing of like, okay, that's emotional reasoning. Just because I feel it doesn't mean it is so. You can also do a thing where you go through this exercise of gathering evidence. Okay, then what's the evidence for me being a bad person? Because people do that naturally. This is going to take longer, so we can go over this in another show. But in a nutshell, you go ahead and do that, but you do the other side. Well, what's the evidence that that's not the case? Because you're also going to have plenty of evidence over on that side.
Yes.
Then you look at the whole thing in totality. And now the thing is to be more accurate with your assessment and your language of what's going on. And then you learn how to do that, how to restructure it, how to have the more accurate language. Okay, so that is very helpful. But I also want to say, it's not that I'm trying to say or that we're trying to advocate that you can't have a negative feeling. Okay, this is another thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because it is actually really healthy to be able to be with your feelings, whether they're negative or positive.
So they're a great place to visit, just not a great place to live or stay.
Possibly. You can decide where you want to stay, and because you don't want to be stuck in negative places. But it is natural and normal. If something happens, something sad happens, it's natural and normal to be sad. If you try to deny it or push it away or suppress it, you're actually going to cause an issue or a problem. So you need to be able to learn how to be with your feelings. But yeah, we don't want you to get stuck there. So then you start employing these things that I'm talking about here on how you shift it then, so it can be in a way you can move forward in a healthy way and even in a most awesome way.
And that's what we want for you, to be living as your best self. I mean, you deserve it. You're a winner. You're a champion. You're the best. If you can tap into that inner potential inside of you. And that's what Cristy's sharing. I know we're going to run out of space here.
Yeah.
But what are a few things that you'd like to just share in conclusion to wrap this up, to get deeper into these 7 steps of emotional mastery?
So the learning to be with your feelings, that's tremendous. I mean, again, I can't even emphasize that enough. They actually did a study where they stuck people in a room with just a way to administer a shock to themselves. And people were so uncomfortable being with their own feelings and thoughts that more people shocked themselves than to have to do that. Okay, that's not a very good way to be going around life, because what people are doing in life is they're not going around shocking themselves like that, but they could be medicating themselves, with alcohol or who knows what, or they could be busy all the time to try and distract themselves. So people are doing unhealthy things to try and avoid or cope with their feelings. So you need to learn how to do healthy things. So you got to take these things down, but build up the healthy way to do it. Because if you just try to take something away without building the healthy way, you're just going to skip from drinking to eating to smoking to whatever. Okay, yes. So you've got to build up the healthy way. How can I be with my feelings and be good with that? And then how can I shift it if I need to shift it? And there's all kinds of ways, and we talked about some of them already, even the putting yourself in the stance, the kind of thing I was talking about with the evidence. That's like a cognitive thought way of changing it. Walking physically, that's another thing. There's all kinds of ways of how you then shift your emotional state.
Well, there's some that I remember from our conversations that I'll share with you as many rituals that I built into my life on a regular practice. Number one, when I wake up in the morning, I exercise.
Right.
First thing. I also listen to audio programs regularly that are positive self-help, psychology type things. I also do walks just about 3-4 times a week on top of the exercise. I started meditating.
Yes.
Finally found a source. As you know, we had tried a bunch of things. I tried things for over a decade.
Yeah.
Nothing stuck. I found this amazing little app called Headspace.
Oh, okay.
Right, which is free. They let you try it for free for 10 days. I fell in love with it because it's 10 minutes. And then it expands into a larger program that I just love. I have my kids doing it now. That's one of my favorite things to be doing.
Yeah, good job.
And those are a handful of the things. Sleep 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yes.
That's been a big one. Now, I know we're going to run out of space here. So how can people reach you? Where can they reach you? How do they do that?
Okay, so I'm local to Phoenix. So my phone number is 602-323-7824. 602-323-7824. And then I have a website, which you can go to, and I have my contact information on there too. So the website is my name spelled out with a PhD on the end. My Cristy has no H. So it is www.CristyLopezPhD.com. CristylopezPhD.com.
And I want to encourage you to go visit Dr. Lopez. I've worked with her for years. I've referred you to clients. By the way, she works with people nationwide, whether it's business, career, life, transitions, those types of things. You can learn more about her. Go to CristyLopezPhD.com. That's CristyLopezPhD.com, or call her at 602-323-7824. Well, I'll tell you, it has been a pleasure and an honor to have you on again.
Oh, I enjoyed this so much. So thank you.
Absolutely. So that's our show for today. I know I feel smarter by having you here, always, right?
See, and you feel smarter.
I feel smarter. Yes. I feel empowered. I feel supercharged. I feel unstoppable. I feel compassionate. I feel like a champion, a winner. I'm the best, and I hope you do too. And I appreciate you being with us. Now is your time. Take action with what Cristy's been sharing with you, right? Take the first steps. I mean, be aware, number one. Get control of your physiology, even if it's the Superman pose, the Wonder Woman pose. I think I'd look funny in the Wonder Woman pose. I really think that. But maybe I'll try it with my wife. I don't know.
That's another show.
Yeah, that's another different show, right?
Yes.
We talked about naming your emotions, right? Evaluate your positive emotion list, your negative emotion list, those on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and more. Get clear on the evidence for a certain feeling and evidence against, right? So you build up a case and then start building positive rituals that you can work with on a regular basis. Go visit Dr. Lopez at CristyLopezPhD.com or call her at 602-323-7824. If you want to get a recap of the show, you can go to growthtofreedom.com/21. That's growthtofreedom.com/21. Or email us at info@growthtofreedom.com. If this show resonates, I hope you'll repeat after me. I'm a winner. I'm a champion. I'm the best. I deserve it, and you do. Find a coach, find a mentor, find a mastermind group, a collaboration group. Seize the day. And you know what? At the end of the day, I truly think that our lives are determined by the quality of the emotions that we take control of. Mm-hmm. Live with, embrace, learn to navigate, right? Because that's what it is. Our life's a navigation. And we can either be a boat without a rudder and come up crashing up on the rocks, or we can put a rudder on it. What you're talking about gives people the ability to do that. Yep. That's our show for today. Seize the day. Make it a great week. We'll see you next time on growthtofreedom.com.